Hello, and welcome to week 4 of inventory. I hope you have enjoyed our study so far. This week, we're going to be getting into a little bit of information that is going to especially bring home further the information that you're going to need to become a good inventory materials manager. And we're going to talk and focus on materials requirements planning. For week 4, be sure that you log into Blackboard and get into the course folders. Now, this week, just as I had previously stated in week number 3, that now we're on the Monday open of new chapter and Sunday close of the chapter. So week 4 should be opening up at 12:30 a.m. on Monday, and then it will close at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So when I talk about closing, not really the folders, but the assignment due dates is what I call the close dates. So be sure that you do work and be able to get those assignments in at a very satisfactory time, meet your timeline, meet your deadlines. At this point, I do not believe I'll be extending any more assignments. I will look at that if I have to, but at this point, I think we're all kind of into the point where we're rolling pretty well and we know what we need to get done and how to get it done. The next week is week 5, and I will tell you a little bit about that for a moment. We will be having our midterm exam, and that covers all the quizzes from chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you need to be sure that you print out your old quizzes. And I've also posted a folder, and it's the midterm folder, has a folder inside of it that has the midterm exam study guide, and those study guides are actually practice exams of quiz 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can take those, as many of those as you want, and those grades do not affect your course grade. So the practice quizzes are just for practice. Now, to get your credit, make sure you take the quizzes that's in the week chapter folder, so that way it doesn't cause you any problems or any confusion. If you have any questions about that, let me know. And I'll be sending out an email to each and every one of you. It has a password, and you don't have to go to a testing center to take this quiz, the midterm quiz. You actually can take it at any time you want to, and you can use your book and notes on this one. I don't mind you doing that, but it's timed. So be sure that you take that in consideration, okay? And so, again, it is part of your midterm grade, and it covers those 4 chapters. Pretty much when you get ready to take your test, just be sure that you get in touch with me, and I'll send you the password. And I'm going to post a video about the midterm exam in that folder next week, so that way you guys will know it's time to take it and what you need to do. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always get in touch with me. So that's pretty much it. Chapter 4 has a lot to do with the situational business report, so hopefully by now you have attended the chat session or you watched the recorded chat session and you know what is expected. This week when you go into the folder, you'll need to be working on your introduction and start working on your model and be able to get that situated. On February the 18th, and I'll put a note there, but on February the 18th, I do want to see a rough draft, and I have put a assignment link for the rough draft under the research paper or research project situational business report folder. So hopefully I can tell you if you're on the right track or not, okay? And you're always welcome, especially if you're on Hub Campus, to come to my office and we can have a little chat about it, talk about it, make sure that you guys are on the right track. So that's kind of everything in the way of announcements and things you need to think about, okay? Let's talk about material requirements planning. As you know, your preparation folder will have your discussion board as well as your quiz. Your weekly assignments folder will have your chapter questions to upload and either a problem or a case problem. So be sure that you check that out and know what you have to turn in. And be aware of that the MRP has some videos. I've got a video in the preparation folder that talks about product trees. This chapter is actually going to talk about product trees, and I'm going to tell you what that is because at this point you may be saying, what in the world is a product tree? Well, it's all part of materials requirement planning. So materials requirement planning is based on the nature of demand. Okay, and there's 2 types of demand, and that's independent and dependent. Pretty simple concept. Independent demand is really not is related to the demand for any other product, And the demand for this, if a company has to make like a wooden table, the demand for the tables is independent. The master production schedule, your MPS items, are independent demand items. And the demand for sides, ends, legs, and tops depends on the demand for the tables. And these are dependent demand items. Now, on the objectives of your MRP, your materials requirement plan, you've got to determine the requirements. You got to think about, what am I going to order? How much of that do I need to order? And when do I need to order? And when to schedule delivery. And you have to keep your priorities current, because demand for and the supply of components can change overnight. I talked about that in week 3. Environmental factors, your weather, economic factors, government shutdowns. So all those different things can affect it. And there's got to be those linkages to other manufacturing, planning, and control functions. And the computer technology has really come a long way. It is pretty much dependent on information technology nowadays. Your supply chain and inventory management is no different. So there's computer software programs that can help you. It can organize and maintain the bills of material structures and linkages, and that's called the bills of material processor. And so there's different types of bills that we're going to be talking about. In Chapter 3, we talked about the resource bill. Now we're talking more about the different type of a bill. It kind of has relation to the inputs and outputs. On page 64 of your text, there is a great chart that's called Production Planning and Control System, and it shows the input and output linkages. And the inputs to Material Requirements Planning System is you have to have the 3 inputs to the MRP is your master production schedule, your inventory records, your bills of material. And your master production schedule is a statement of which end items are to be produced, the quality of each, and the dates that are to be completed. And your inventory records, as a major endpoint to the MRP system, is inventory. There's planning factors, and then there's also the data that is maintaining the inventory file, and then that is called the bill of material, and it's one of the most important documents in a manufacturing company. When we talk about the bills of materials, before we can make anything, we know that we have to know what components are needed, right? And page 65 has a couple of figures. Figure 4.3 shows you a simplified bill of material as well as the product tree. This is where the product tree comes in. So a product tree is shows a product tree for the bill of material. And the product tree is a convenient way to think about the bill of materials, okay? And it's seldom used except for teaching and testing. And in this test, it's used for this purpose. So it's to show you how to you're drawing things out and figuring out what you're going to need and how you're going to get it. So that's what a product tree does. And then you've got the parent-component relationship. And an assembly is considered the parent, and the items that comprise it are called your component items, okay? And then you have a multi-level bill, and it shows the same product as the single level bill shown in figures 4.3 and 4.4 over in your textbook. But the single level components have been expanded. So you've got this table, and you've got little legs and that run there. And for example, you've got 100 of your table, 100 units. That's your parent. And then your legs, you got 203. Your ends, you got 411. Your sides, you got 622. Your top, you have 023. Hardware kit 722. Those are your components. All those little legs are your components. And then your table's at the top. Very interesting concept. Your multi-level bills are formed as logical groupings of parts into assemblies based on the way the product is assembled. And then we've got a multiple bill, and that is used when the companies usually make more than one product. Your single level bill is a material contains only the parent and its immediate components. Your book has several examples of the product trees and example problems. And then we have an indented bill, and that is the multi-level bill that can be shown as an indented bill of material, and it uses indentations as a way of identifying parents from components. And you have summarized parts list, and that's all the parts that need to make one complete assembly. And then you've got your planning bill. That's your artificial groupings of components for planning purposes. And then we got the where used and pegging reports, and that's a listing of all the parents in which a component is used. And then the pegging report is similar to where use report, but the pegging shows only those parents for which there's an existing requirement, whereas the where's use report shows all the parents for the component. The different bills of materials can be used for many different reasons. And product definition, engineering, your service parts, your planning. The MRP process is pretty much your exploding and offsetting. You're looking at your gross and your net requirements. You're releasing your orders. You're looking at your capacity requirements planning, your low-level coding and netting, and multiple bills of materials. And the exploding and offsetting requires lead time. And you're going to consider your product tree, and you also have to explode the requirements, and that's you're multiplying the requirements by the usage quantity and recording the appropriate requirements. Your planned orders, there should be a planned order for 50 in week 5, and a planned order release for that number is week 4. So if an order for 50 of the units of a product, as it's to be released in week 4, 50 B's and 50 C's must be available in that week. And remember, the B's and C's stand for your items. Okay. Again, I'm simplifying it to where it doesn't seem too technical in nature. On page 72, there's a couple of tables where you can figure out your planned order receipts and your planned order releases. It's very interesting. If it was me, you can use an Excel spreadsheet to try to calculate, or you can do it on a piece of paper. And we're talking about the gross and the net requirements. And to figure that out, it's a simple formula at the bottom of page 72. Your net requirements is equal to your gross requirements minus your available inventory. So if you have 50 gross, you're going to subtract that by 20 in your available inventory, and that gives you 30 units. Simple math there. And I like simple math. You're releasing your orders. That means that you're going to authorize to purchase, to buy the necessary material to manufacture and to make the component. And when the manufacturing order is released to the computer, it's going to allocate the required quantities. Your scheduled receipts are orders placed on manufacturing or on a vendor and represent a commitment to make or buy. And then you have open orders that are your scheduled receipts on the MRP record, and your net requirements, or the calculations for your net requirements, can be identified to include your scheduled receipts. So it can be your gross requirements minus your scheduled receipts minus your available inventory. And there's a couple of example problems, and that's why I want you to go in the prep folder and watch the video regarding your product trees. Your basic MRP record shows the current time period. It shows periods called time buckets. It calls the number of periods in a record is called your planning horizon. Remember that from chapter 3. And then any item that's considered available at the beginning of the time bucket, which is required, and then the quantity shown in the projected available row is projected on-hand balance at the end of that period. And the immediate or most current period is called the action bucket. And the bucket list system shows only the time buckets which have MRP activity. There's capacity requirements planning. We've talked about that. Then low-level coding and netting, and those are the lowest level in which a part resides in all bills of material. We talk about the multiple bills of material, and most of the companies make more than one product, and we know that. And often they have to use the same components in many of their products, and the material requirements planning system gathers the planned order releases from all the parents and creates a schedule of gross requirements. When you use the material requirements plan, you have to think about the basic responsibilities of the planner, and that's you. The launch, the rescheduling, the reconciling, solving critical shortages, and coordinate with other planners. So you've got your planned and your released and your firm planned orders. And sometimes there's those little exception messages that have to come up in a good MRP system, and that's your software generates an exception message. And it advises the planner with some events need attention. And then transaction messages pretty much mean the planner must tell the MRP software of all actions taken that will influence your MRP. So those are all different things throughout that. When you manage the MRP, you got to think about things such as priority, your bottom-up replanning, your reducing system nervousness, and that's trying to figure out if changes are important enough to react to whether the order needs to be changed or not. So that is the MRP in the model in a nutshell. I hope as you think about that this week, you're putting yourself in the place of the inventory materials management. And I'm hoping that you took something away from this chapter. Do not let the calculations deter you in any way. There's a lot of different resources on Google that you can look at. Go on YouTube videos that talk about product trees. Those are all different resources, and I'll share with you as I find new resources. But again, they're simple calculations. You're projecting, you are estimating. I won't say guessing because guessing is not a good word to use here. So if you have any questions about the chapter, please read through the chapter. I hit the highlights, the high spots, and if you have any questions, I will be here to answer them. Have a great week.